It all started in 1847. The wind howled across the endless plains, carrying the scent of blood and burning wood. Florence stumbled through the knee-high grass, her breath coming in ragged gasps. The rifle she clutched was too heavy for her aching arms, slick with sweat and dirt. Behind her, the remains of her family's homestead smoldered in the moonlight, a beacon for the men who hunted her. She hadn't seen their faces clearly, just flashes, grinning teeth beneath wide-brimmed hats, the gleam of steel in the firelight, her mother's scream vanishing into the night. She ran because there was nothing else to do, because stopping meant dying. A sharp crack split the air, a rifle shot. The bullet whistled past her, biting into the earth near her feet. Panic surged through her chest. She veered toward the tree line, toward the deeper wilds where no settler dared go. The land stretched dark and untamed before her, a jagged maze of rock and bramble. She forced herself forward, her body threatening to collapse with every step. Her lungs burned, her legs screamed, but she didn't stop until the sounds of pursuit faded into the wind. She collapsed near a dry creek bed, pressing herself against the cool earth. The night air carried unfamiliar sounds, distant hoots of owls, the rustling of unseen creatures. But beneath it all was something else, something deeper. A whisper almost drifting on the wind. Florence swallowed hard, gripping the rifle as she scanned the darkness. Her mother had told her stories about these lands, about the spirits that walked here. She'd never believed them, but as she sat there, alone in the vast and pulsing night, she began to wonder. A twig snapped. She spun, raising the rifle. A man stood at the edge of the clearing, watching her. Moonlight glinted off his bronze skin, the high edges of his cheekbones casting long shadows. He was tall, his dark hair woven with eagle feathers, his stance unshaken. His eyes, deep and unreadable, held no fear. Florence's fingers tensed on the trigger. He made no move for a weapon, only studied her as if weighing something unseen. "You are lost." His voice was low, steady. She swallowed, trying to keep the tremor from her own. They killed my family." He didn't react. No surprise, no sympathy. Just silence, deep as the night. Then he turned. She hesitated. Her body ached for rest, for shelter. But she had no reason to trust him, no reason to follow. Yet, when he walked away, she found herself rising, her legs moving on their own. He led her through the wilderness, past towering rock formations and silent, ancient trees. The air felt different here, heavier, alive. The further they walked, the more she felt a presence in the land itself, something vast and watching. At last, they arrived at a hidden encampment nestled between the cliffs. Firelight flickered on the faces of people who turned to watch them with guarded expressions. Florence felt their eyes on her, curious, wary. The man spoke to an older woman wrapped in thick furs. She regarded Florence for a long moment before nodding. The man turned back to her. "My name is Agnino," he said. "You may stay until you are strong enough to leave." It was not kindness, just a statement. She nodded anyway. Inside the tent they gave her, she curled up on a thick hide, exhaustion dragging her under. But before sleep claimed her, she thought she heard something outside, whispers in a language she didn't understand. A voice, low and ancient, rustling like the wind through leaves. She dreamt of fire and smoke, and somewhere, beyond the flames, a shadow watching her. Florence's body ached with every movement, her muscles stiff from days of exertion. But Agnino did not relent. He moved through the forest like a spirit, his footfalls silent, his presence an extension of the land itself. She struggled to match his pace, her boots catching on roots and uneven ground, her breath harsh in her ears. Again, he commanded, his voice firm but absent of cruelty. She adjusted the grip on her bow, her fingers raw from the string's bite. The arrow trembled as she drew it back, her shoulders tight, her focus fraying. She released too early. The shot went wide, embedding itself in the dirt instead of the crude wooden target. Agnino exhaled, neither pleased nor disappointed, only watchful. "You hesitate," he said. "Out here, hesitation is death." Florence gritted her teeth, frustration mounting. "I wasn't raised to fight like this." "No," he agreed, taking a step closer. "But you were not raised to survive, either." His words stung more than she wanted to admit. She had lived on the edge of the wild, had seen hardship, but none of it had prepared her for the lawless brutality of the frontier. The world had taken everything from her, and she had barely escaped with her life. Añino saw it in her. Her fear, her fury, her desperation to prove she was not just another lost soul waiting to be buried in the dust. He handed her another arrow. She took it, steadied her breath, and tried again. This time, the arrow flew straight, striking the target's outer ring. Not perfect, but better. Añino gave a slight nod, an acknowledgement without praise. Enough for today. The others still watched her with wary eyes. She could feel their judgment, the unspoken question of why a white girl was allowed to stay among them. Some whispered that she was an omen, a bad spirit that had stumbled into their lives. Others saw only trouble, the kind that drew men with guns and greed. She understood their mistrust. That night, she sat near the fire, wrapping her fingers around a clay bowl of stew, the warmth seeping into her bones. Across the circle, White Owl, the old woman who had first looked upon her with such deep, knowing eyes, murmured softly to Añino in their tongue. Florence didn't need to understand the words to know she was the subject of discussion. Añino turned to her. "The elders wish to know your plans." She stiffened. "I don't have any." "Then make some," he said simply. She thought about it. She had nowhere to go, no family left, no home to return to. The only thing she had was her name and the rifle that had failed to save the people she loved. "I want to stay." The words left her lips before she could second-guess them. Añino held her gaze, measuring something in her. The firelight flickered in his dark eyes, casting shadows that made him seem older, wearier. "You will need more than that," he said. Before she could ask what he meant, the distant sound of hoofbeats shattered the quiet. A rider galloped into the village, his horse lathered in sweat. He slid from the saddle, breathless, his face grim. "They're coming." Silence fell, then movement quick and sure. The warriors rose, grabbing weapons, exchanging hushed words. The women ushered the children toward the deeper shadows of the camp. Añino stood. "How many?" 10, maybe more. They followed the girl's tracks. Florence's blood ran cold. Añino turned to her. "You bring death to my people." She swallowed hard, the weight of guilt pressing against her ribs. "I didn't." His expression darkened. "It does not matter. The outlaws would be here soon." Men like Elias Crow did not leave loose ends, and she was the last piece of a story they wanted buried. She had seen their faces. She had survived. That alone was enough for them to hunt her down. Añino grabbed his war club, his expression unreadable. "You wish to stay?" She nodded, her throat too tight to speak. "Then fight." The minutes stretched thin as they prepared. The warriors fanned out, bows and rifles ready. Florence's hands shook as she loaded her weapon. She had never killed a man before, had never wanted to, but survival was no longer a question of want. The first shot rang out, breaking the night. Chaos followed. The air filled with the sharp crack of gunfire, the thud of arrows finding flesh, the screams of the wounded. Florence pressed herself against the rocks, aiming into the darkness, her heart pounding against her ribs. A figure loomed ahead, the glint of steel catching the firelight. She fired. The rifle kicked back against her shoulder, the force nearly knocking her over. The man crumpled, a choked gurgle escaping his lips before he stilled. Florence gasped, her hands shaking. There was no time to think. Another man rushed toward her, blade raised. Before she could react, Añino appeared, striking with brutal efficiency, his war club connecting with the outlaw's skull. The battle raged, but the outlaws had not expected resistance. They fell back, their numbers dwindling. As quickly as it had begun, it was over. The few who remained alive vanished into the night, their pursuit abandoned. The village was left in smoldering ruin. Bodies lay sprawled in the dirt, blood soaking into the earth. Among them were not only outlaws, but Añino's own people. He stood in the center of the carnage, his expression unreadable. His hands, stained with blood, clenched at his sides. Florence knew then that there was no going back. She had drawn death to this place, and now she owed it her life. The wind stirred, carrying the scent of fire and something older, something deeper. Agnino turned to her, his voice heavy with meaning. This is only the beginning. The survivors moved swiftly through the wild, their presence swallowed by the vast emptiness of the land. The wind carried the scent of blood and gunpowder, the memory of battle lingering in the cool night air. Agnino led the way, his movements deliberate, each step chosen with the precision of a man who understood the language of the earth. Florence followed, her legs aching, her body still trembling from the violence that had torn through the village. She had killed a man. The weight of it sat heavy in her chest, an iron stone pressing against her ribs. She had fired, he had fallen, and the world had continued on as if nothing had changed. Except everything had. The deeper they traveled, the more the land shifted. The rolling plains gave way to jagged rock formations, the trees thinning into skeletal remains of ancient giants. The moon cast silver light over the terrain, illuminating narrow paths that wove through the towering cliffs. A place untouched by time, Agnino's people called it Ghost Rock Canyon, a land whispered about in stories, a place where spirits still walked among the living. The others did not question why they had come here. Perhaps they too felt the pull of something unseen, the presence that seemed to hum beneath the earth. They made camp beneath an overhanging ledge, the fire burning low to avoid drawing unwanted eyes. Florence sat with her back against the rock, staring into the flames, her fingers curled around the rifle in her lap. The blood had dried on her hands, but she still felt it there, staining her skin. "You carry ghosts now," Agnino said. She looked up. He sat across from her, his expression unreadable, his face cast in shifting shadows. "I didn't have a choice." The words felt weak, like an excuse that had already withered in her throat. Agnino studied her. "No, you did not." Silence stretched between them, filled only by the crackle of burning wood and the distant cry of some unseen creature. Florence swallowed. "Do you see them?" His gaze did not waver. "The dead." She nodded. He exhaled slowly, the fire reflecting in his dark eyes. "I see many things." Florence shivered. The air felt heavier here, thicker, as if something unseen pressed against her skin. She had never believed in spirits, but in this place, in this moment, she wasn't so sure. Agnino reached into the small pouch at his side, retrieving a bundle of dried sage. He tossed it into the fire, and immediately the scent filled the air, earthy, sharp, cleansing. "The spirit road is not walked by the dead alone," he murmured. Florence didn't ask what he meant. She wasn't sure she wanted to know. Sleep did not come easily that night. When she finally drifted into the embrace of exhaustion, the dreams came. She was standing in the ruins of her family's homestead, the air thick with smoke. The bodies lay where they had fallen, their faces obscured by shadow. She turned, and there, just beyond the flames, stood a figure. Agnino, but not as he was. His face was painted in stark white, his body adorned with feathers and beads, his eyes glowing like embers. Behind him, others stood, figures lost to time, their forms shifting like mist in the firelight. He lifted a hand, beckoning. She stepped forward, drawn by some unseen force, but as soon as she moved, the ground beneath her feet crumbled away. She fell. Florence woke with a gasp, her heart hammering against her ribs. The fire had burned low, casting only faint light across the camp. Agnino sat where he had before, awake, unmoving, watching. "You saw them," he said. She swallowed hard, her skin damp with sweat. "I don't," she stopped. Lying felt useless. "What does it mean?" Agnino's gaze shifted to the horizon, where the first traces of dawn painted the sky in muted gold. "The spirits do not come without reason." She thought of her mother's journal, the pages filled with strange markings, symbols she had never understood. She thought of the symbol she had found etched into the canyon wall, the same one from the worn leather pages. A memory surfaced unbidden. Her mother, sitting by the window at dusk, fingers tracing those same symbols into the wooden table. A distant look in her eyes. "We were never meant to stay here," she had whispered once when she thought Florence wasn't listening. The land remembers. Florence hadn't understood then. But now, as she sat in the heart of a place where the past bled into the present, she wondered if her mother had always known something she hadn't. Agnino rose, his movement fluid, deliberate. "Come." She hesitated only a moment before pushing herself up, following him deeper into the canyon. The path twisted, narrowing as the towering rock walls closed in around them. The morning light cast long shadows, making the land feel both ancient and alive. They stopped before a large stone, its surface weathered by time. Carved into it was the same symbol from her mother's journal, a spiral, curling inward, surrounded by lines that resembled flowing water. She reached out, fingers brushing against the grooves. The stone was warm beneath her touch. Agnino watched her closely. "You have always belonged to this place," he said, his voice quiet. Florence looked at him, searching his face for something, anything that would make sense of the storm inside her. "Why?" His expression did not change. "Because the land does not forget." The wind stirred around them, carrying whispers she could not quite understand. A shiver ran down her spine, but she did not pull away. For the first time since she had lost everything, she felt something she could not name. Not fear, not grief. Something older, something waiting. Agnino turned, his gaze fixed on the horizon. "They will come again." Florence tightened her grip on the rifle, her pulse steady now. "Then we will be ready." The wind carried their words into the open sky, lost among the echoes of those who had walked this land long before them. The sun bled into the horizon, casting Ghost Rock Canyon in molten hues of red and gold. The wind carried dust and whispers, the echoes of lives long past. Florence crouched on the ridge, her breath steady, her fingers curled around the stock of her rifle. Below, the outlaws were coming. Elias Crow rode at the front, his long coat billowing behind him like a shadow. His men followed, a dozen strong, their horses kicking up dust as they wove through the narrow pass. They moved with the arrogance of men who had never been beaten, who had left only ruin in their wake. Agnino stood beside Florence, silent, watching. He held his war club loosely in one hand, the other resting against the earth as if listening to its breath. His people had fought and bled for this land. Now, they would fight again. "They do not expect resistance," he murmured. Florence exhaled. "Then let's surprise them." The canyon had been prepared. Every rock, every path had been chosen with purpose. They had no numbers, no firepower to match the outlaws, but they had the land. The land remembered. The first shot rang out, cracking through the canyon like a splintering bone. Florence saw one of Crow's men jerk back in his saddle, toppling to the ground before the echo faded. Then came the chaos. Arrows whistled from the shadows, finding flesh before the outlaws could react. Gunfire erupted, bullets sparking off the canyon walls as Crow's men scrambled for cover. The horses screamed, rearing in panic, their riders cursing as they fought for control. Florence moved swiftly, shifting positions between the rocks. She raised her rifle, lining up her shot. Another outlaw fell, his body crumpling into the dust. She didn't think about it, didn't let herself hesitate. This was survival. Crow bellowed orders, his voice sharp as a whip. He turned his gaze upward, searching for the source of the ambush. His eyes locked on Florence. Recognition flickered, followed by something else, something colder. "Come out, girl," he called, his voice carrying over the gunfire. "You think hiding will save you?" Florence's hands tightened on the rifle. Her heart pounded, but she did not answer. Agnino slipped away into the shadows, vanishing between the rocks. This was the plan. They would draw Crow's men deeper, make them fight a battle they didn't understand. The outlaws regrouped, their gunfire less frantic now, more controlled. They pressed forward, using the canyon walls for cover, forcing Florence and the others back. A figure moved in the periphery of her vision. She turned, too late. A hand clamped onto her wrist, wrenching her forward. She barely caught a glimpse of the outlaw before he knocked the rifle from her grip, sending it clattering to the ground. She twisted, bringing up her elbow, striking hard. The man grunted, but didn't release her. His other hand closed around her throat. Florence gasped, her vision tilting, dark spots dancing at the edges. Then the pressure vanished. The outlaw stumbled back, a war club buried deep in his chest. Agnino pulled it free in one swift motion, his face unreadable. The man gurgled once, then fell. Florence sucked in air, her pulse hammering. Agnino met her gaze. No hesitation, he reminded her. She nodded, swallowing the shaking in her limbs. There was no time for weakness. Crow's men pushed forward, but the canyon did not welcome them. The path narrowed ahead, forcing them into a bottleneck. Gino's warriors waited. As the outlaws rushed in, the earth seemed to shift beneath them. A hidden pit gave way, sending two men plunging into the depths below. Others stumbled, their footing unsteady on the loose rocks. Florence retrieved her rifle, steadying her aim. She fired, and another outlaw fell. Crow, still on horseback, snarled in frustration. He spurred his horse forward, charging through the chaos. His gun barked, sending a bullet tearing through the air. Florence barely ducked in time. The shot splintered the rock beside her. She turned, leveling her rifle, but Crow was already moving. He rode hard straight for her. She dove aside as the horse thundered past. Crow wheeled back, his gun raised. Then the ground shifted. The earth cracked beneath his horse's hooves, a sinkhole opening where the canyon had been weakened. The animal screamed, rearing, but it was too late. Crow tumbled from the saddle, hitting the ground hard. His horse plunged into the chasm, swallowed by dust and darkness. Florence pushed herself to her feet, rifle in hand. Crow groaned, rolling onto his side. His hat had fallen away, his face streaked with dirt and blood. But his eyes were the same, cold, calculating. He reached for his gun. Florence aimed. "Don't!" He paused, his fingers curling over the handle. A smirk tugged at his lips. "You got grit, girl," he murmured. "Didn't think you had it in you." Her hands didn't shake. "Not this time. You killed my family," she said, her voice steady. "You came for me." Crow exhaled, tilting his head. "Ain't personal. Just the way the world works." Her finger tightened on the trigger. Gino's voice cut through the moment. "The land will take him." Florence hesitated. The wind stirred, carrying whispers she could not quite understand. Crow shifted, sensing the moment of indecision. His smirk widened. "That's right, girl. You ain't a killer." But the land remembered. The canyon that had been their refuge, their battlefield, had already decided. The ground beneath Crow's broken body crumbled. His smirk vanished as he slid, grasping at the loose earth, but there was nothing to hold on to. He disappeared into the chasm. The dust settled. The battle was over. The warriors emerged from the shadows, their expressions solemn. The price had been paid in blood, but the land was still theirs. Agnino stood beside Florence, silent for a long moment. Then he spoke. "The spirit road does not end here." She knew he was right. This was only the beginning. The dawn rose over Ghost Rock Canyon, bathing the land in gold. The wind carried away the last echoes of battle, leaving only silence. Florence turned, her mother's journal still tucked in her belt, her rifle slung across her back. The land did not forget, and neither would she.